topics. So let's go out and find some others that had those same sorts of experiences in dealing with hostile audiences or people that don't think the same way you do. And that's how this panel came about, right? And I have been told to stay to a script. Because now that I'm retired, I'm liable to say anything, right? Because it really doesn't matter. Our panelists, like myself, this evening, are going to talk about how they dealt with their own hostile audiences and what engagement strategies they've employed to turn those audiences around. And I really think we've got a great panel in that regard. We've got some great stories, and we've got some very compelling messages and experiences to share with you today. First of all, we're going to introduce these folks in order of their talk. Deborah Kazanelson-Dean, who is Executive Vice President at Edelman in Los Angeles, to my immediate left, mother of a Buckeye, but that's okay. We also have Morgan Krinkla over here, who's Manager of Issues Management Communications at Chevron Corporation. And everybody, if they have to fill up, you go to your Chevron station tonight, right? We also have Robert Alaniz, a Senior Partner at the Milagros Strategy Group, right there. And all the way to the end, we have Clint Schaff, who's Vice President and U.S. General Manager of Camp Playa, Vision 7 International. And I'll certainly go into more detail about their background as they take their chairs. Actually, they're already taking their chairs, actually before they tell their story. So as for myself, I get to begin my story now, and here we are. It starts off with the EV1. I certainly have had plenty of experiences dealing with critics and skeptics and cynics, and in fact, I often deal with these folks all at the same time. I was intimately involved with GM's first electric car, the EV1, and the issues that developed when we actually had to make the tough decision to end production and marketing of the EV1 and remove them from the roads. I was the guy who was assigned to explain how we came up with that decision and why we did that. And when I say intimately, I think the most vocal critics, I really believe, the critics of GM's decisions seem to personally blame me for the cancellation of the EV1 program. I mean, I was their very easy target for their displeasure. And the reason, for many reasons, I was included in a documentary, a movie, called Who Killed the Electric Car? I don't know if anybody in this room has seen it. All right, so you people know, you're already laughing. In which director Chris Payne basically proposed the premise that there was a GM-led conspiracy to prove that the EV1 wouldn't work as a consumer vehicle, that the electric cars just weren't what consumers wanted, and frankly, we wanted to sell more Hummers, more large SUVs, more pickup trucks that would gobble up more gasoline. So there's this alleged conspiracy between General Motors, Big Oil, and portions of state government to prove that this electric vehicle wouldn't work. Hey, I was in a movie, right? I just landed in California, one of my first assignments. Lucky me, I was on, IMDb, right? I'm back in Detroit. I'm in the hallways of GM. I'm a hero, right? I'm a star. I'm already in a movie. So I want to show you how lucky I really was in that regard. There are one of four things that will happen with the EV1s. They'll go to colleges and universities, to engineering schools. They'll go to museums and other displays across the country. Other EV1 vehicles are being driven by our engineers, and the other option for the EV1s at the end of their life is recycling. But know that every part of the EV1 is going to be recycled, dismantled through a third party, and then reused. Everything is going to be recycled. We're not just going to crush it and send it off to a landfill. And what do you see, right? Cars that are crushed. Apparently, they're going off to a landfill, right? So I look like Richard Nixon's press secretary. I was called, Darth Vader. Actually, they started calling me Barth Vader as a play off of my name. And it does. I look like the village idiot, right? And there are 4 or 5 other quotes that same thing happened, right? I could have said the sky was, it could have been a beautiful day. Sky is blue, and there goes a tornado in a Kansas trailer park. But what you don't understand, or what is not also told, is those bodies had to be crushed to send the vehicles through a shredder so that you could separate all the ferrous metals for recycling purposes. But it is what it is. This is what the general public saw, and I just looked like the evil corporate liar at the time. However, obviously, from my point of view, my personal point of view, that conspiracy premise and all of the angst that was perpetuated and the movie sort of reinforced really couldn't have been further from the truth. But the public really didn't know that. All they remember is scenes like that and some of the other quotes that I was refuted without really getting the whole story, right? A lot of things hit the cutting room floor. In life, there's a lot of black and white, but the truth is usually somewhere in the middle, right? There was a lot of gray in the story. 800 leases in a 4-year time frame does not a business make. Gas is 99 cents a gallon. We didn't have this huge awareness of what climate change was all about. Didn't know what, didn't have these energy wars going on in the Middle East, and you could fill up your Suburban for maybe, $15, and it was like a rolling living room. So there was less, that's my disclaimer, that there was less of a desire to make the trade-offs in your daily transportation lifestyle that were necessary to make a car like the EV1 work. It was a great car. I had one, I loved it, but I never went more than 40 miles because I never wanted to get stuck, which I did on one occasion. There was true range anxiety back in the day. So when you really take a look at it, what killed the electric car was this whole affordable gasoline. A lot of things were there. There wasn't this GM-led conspiracy. But the film and the emotions really was the basis for the understanding of what our commitment was, and to what was our commitment about removing the vehicle from the environmental equation. Well, people didn't think there was much. There were EV1 funerals. There were more pictures of the crushed vehicles. And Chris Payne, love him to death. He was the director. He was an evangelist. He had his story to tell. But we had to do a lot of work at General Motors to change this misperception and this hostility that was growing. There was this huge groundswell of hostility that evolved. So what did we do? We decided to open up our doors to Chris. We brought him to Detroit. We showed him everything that was in our technology cupboards, had him talk to all our senior engineers and see all of the things that we were working on, because we had to answer the question, if not the EV1, then what? And that's what we really had to do, and open up and be transparent, and that was the question that we had to ultimately answer. The slide here, Revenge of the Electric Car, probably says it all. Eventually Chris did release a second movie. It was called Revenge of the Electric Car, in which GM and yours truly were presented in a much better light, thanks to the Chevrolet Volt. Of course, I had a little 3-second little throw-in soundbite there. It was a cameo, but I think he was throwing a dog a bone. But at least I was there to do that. It was our new EV vehicle, the Chevy Volt, was even the featured guest at the premiere of that movie. Chris and I, we've got a great relationship now. We see each other at several different events, and I consider him a reference and a friend, especially in this transition to a new life of mine. So the bottom line is, in my nearly 30 years in public relations, I've learned that really being transparent and being open and really trying to understand your opponent's point of view usually solves the most difficult situations involving outside detractors and critics. It's the best way, I think, to build bridges with hostile audiences and eventually turn them into passionate third-party advocates that brands really need to advance their cause, right? They need these third-party advocates to speak on their behalf. And I've developed my own strategy, if you will. There's not a whole lot of rocket science behind it, of advocacy and audience engagement that involves transparency, finding this common ground with our opponents, and really turning them into our partners, having them speak on our behalf. And eventually, they have become our most vocal advocates. And there's a basic roadmap that I've put together here. Obviously, it's called Advotocracy. First, the issue with the EV1 really wasn't that there was this GM-led conspiracy at all. It was the fact that people perceived this to be a viable technology, but nobody was really working to advance it or pursue it. So we really had to identify what the issue was. And then we had to open up and we had to be transparent. You know, the problem with the EV1 situation was that nobody outside of General Motors really knew about the amazing work being done in the pursuit of these kinds of advanced technologies. We really needed to correct the things that were being said about us, right? And that meant bringing somebody into our tent, just like we did with Chris Payne. I mean, I actually was Chris Payne's PR person when we launched the Chevrolet Volt in Detroit, making sure that each reporter had their shot at asking him questions about what he thought about the car. We were connected at the hip, so that was kind of an odd twist of fate. And third, you really need to keep your foot on the gas, right? Initiating a few key events really wasn't going to do this, you know, handshakes and smiles and a couple dinners. We really had to go all in and find as many opportunities as possible to tell the stories to help reshape public perception. So persistence, perseverance, and determination are really tools that can be found in every effective leader's toolbox. And we can dig into this process a whole lot more throughout the panel, as well as discuss the other approaches that our panelists have used during their own situations with critics, skeptics, and cynics. I think all of us believe this information can really be invaluable for PR professionals. We all at some point are going to have to deal with hostile audiences and those who don't think like we do. So hopefully this panel and this discussion will give you some ideas and some lessons learned as to how to approach that and really help you create a competitive advantage and show you how to use your own methods of turning your hostile audiences into your own advocates. So